The Arctic Ocean in 1942 was not merely cold. It was hostile, indifferent, and lethal. Beneath its steel-gray surface lay a simple truth every sailor understood. Fall into these waters, and you were already dead. At minus 1.8 degrees Celsius, the sea granted a man no more than 5 minutes before his heart failed. And across this frozen expanse, the fate of an entire front of the war depended on ships that had no right to survive it. The Royal Navy called the route the Murmansk Run, an 800-mile passage from Iceland to northern Russia through ice-choked seas and constant enemy threat. For the Soviet Union, it was the only lifeline keeping the Eastern Front alive. For the Germans, it was a killing ground. U-boats stalked the marginal ice zone where sonar failed. Luftwaffe bombers struck whenever weather allowed. Surface raiders waited in Norwegian fjords, ready to strike with hours' notice. By the spring of 1942, the PQ convoys had earned a grim reputation. PQ-12 lost 1 ship. PQ-13 lost 5. PQ-17 would later become a catastrophe, losing 2/3 of its vessels in a single week. Every convoy sailed knowing the odds worsened with each crossing. In late April, attention focused on convoy QP-11, heading west from Murmansk after delivering tanks, aircraft, and ammunition. 19 merchant ships sailed under escort, but 1 ship mattered more than all the rest combined. At the center was HMS Edinburgh, a town-class cruiser carrying cargo so sensitive it made admirals uneasy and accountants nervous. Edinburgh was not just escorting ships. She was carrying payment. Locked deep within her bomb room were 465 gold bars, refined in Siberia, weighing over 5 tons. In 1942, they were worth £4.7 million, roughly $500 million in modern terms. The Soviet Union could not pay for Hurricanes and Valentine tanks with rubles no one trusted. Gold was the only currency the world still believed in. And merchant ships were dying too quickly to risk carrying it. Launched in 1938 from Swan Hunter's Yard on the River Tyne, Edinburgh represented Britain's pre-war faith in treaties and balance. Displacing over 10,000 tons, armed with 12 6-inch guns in 4 triple turrets, she could outrun raiders and outgun destroyers. Her armor was sufficient against enemy cruisers, her speed impressive on paper. Before the Arctic, she had fought in the North Sea, guarded Gibraltar convoys, and hunted raiders in the Denmark Strait. None of that prepared her crew for this. In the Arctic, ice crippled machinery and blinded lookouts. Gun barrels froze. Ammunition hoists seized. Radar failed when ice coated the antenna. Sailors chipped frozen steel with hammers while standing watch in 40-knot winds. Boilers were kept running even in port. If they cooled, the ship might never sail again. Frostbite cases filled the sick bay. Hot food became a combat necessity. Captain Hugh Faulkner commanded Edinburgh with the calm competence the Royal Navy prized. He knew his ship was strong, but here, strength meant endurance. QP-11's escort, 4 destroyers, corvettes, and a minesweeper, was barely adequate. German submarines waited. Bombers circled. And somewhere beyond the ice, heavier forces stood ready. Edinburgh sailed into the gauntlet carrying Britain's credibility and Stalin's gold. By April 1942, Stalin trusted almost nothing. Since Operation Barbarossa began the previous summer, the Soviet Union had lost over 5 million soldiers killed, captured, or missing. German panzer divisions had reached the outskirts of Moscow. And the war's outcome still hung in the balance. What awaited Edinburgh was not uncertainty, but necessity. Behind her, Leningrad was starving, sealed inside a siege that would ultimately kill more than 1 million civilians. Ukraine's industrial heartland was gone. The factories that once built Soviet tanks and aircraft now flew German flags. What kept the Red Army in the fight was not ideology, nor fear of political officers, it was material. Aircraft, tanks, fuel, radios, trucks, food, and boots, all flowing through Murmansk and Archangel from Britain and the United States. The Allies called it Lend-Lease, a convenient fiction that implied repayment someday. Stalin understood it differently. For him, it was survival, and survival required payment. Soviet gold reserves, drawn from nationalized wealth and Siberian mines, provided the only currency the world trusted. By agreement with London, part of that aid would be paid for in bullion, not promises. Edinburgh carried one such payment. 465 gold bars, packed into 93 wooden crates, were loaded under tight Soviet security on April 28, 1942. Each crate was heavy, unmarked except for Cyrillic serial numbers, and lashed deep in the ship's bomb room below the waterline. Officially, the manifest listed special cargo. Unofficially, every sailor involved knew exactly what they were handling. Gold had a weight and a silence that needed no explanation. No guards were posted. Guarding it openly would have acknowledged its presence. And gold at sea had always been considered bad luck. Edinburgh sailed from Murmansk on April 30th, escorting westbound convoy QP-11. Her orders were straightforward and impossible. Protect the convoy, avoid superior enemy forces, deliver the cargo intact. Within hours, a German submarine found her. U-456, after days of fruitless patrol, detected heavy propeller noise north of Murmansk. At periscope depth, its commander saw a British cruiser zigzagging through ice-streaked seas. At 14:20, 4 electric torpedoes were fired. One hit. The detonation struck Edinburgh's starboard quarter below the waterline, crippling her propulsion and destroying her steering gear. Flooding spread rapidly. Her speed collapsed. Worse, her rudders jammed hard to starboard, locking the ship into a slow, helpless turn. Attempts to steer by engine power failed. Counterflooding prevented capsize but left her wallowing, barely controllable. Convoy QP-11 steamed on without her. Destroyers remained close, their sonar useless in Arctic conditions. Damage control teams fought flooding through the night. Divers attempted repairs in near-zero visibility and freezing water, with no success. By dawn on May 1st, the truth was unavoidable. Edinburgh could not escape under her own power. She could still fight. German reconnaissance aircraft had already reported her position. Before sunrise, 3 German destroyers, Z7, Z24, and Z25, sortied from northern Norway with clear orders: find the crippled cruiser and sink her before British heavy units could intervene. They made contact at 0630. Edinburgh lay broadside to the swell, trailing oil, her jammed rudder limiting her arcs of fire. The German formation closed methodically, exploiting her weakness. British destroyers moved to shield her, knowing they were badly outmatched. Captain Faulkner watched the range fall and made the only calculation left to him. He could not run. He could not maneuver. But his ship still carried 12 operational 6-inch guns. If Edinburgh was to die, she would do so fighting. At 7,000 yards, her forward turrets opened fire. The first salvo fell short. Corrections were made. The second straddled. The third struck Z24, tearing through her superstructure and forcing the German destroyers to break off temporarily. It bought Edinburgh minutes, nothing more. As the German ships regrouped beyond radar-directed range, their commander changed tactics. The next attack would come from multiple directions, exploiting the cruiser's damaged stern and limited gun arcs. Textbook destroyer doctrine. And the battle was far from over. The Germans now executed the kind of multi-axis attack cruisers dreaded most, one that forced impossible choices. Which threat took priority? Which sector would be left exposed? Captain Faulkner saw the trap forming and reacted instantly. He split Edinburgh's firepower, ordering the after turrets to engage Z7 while the forward guns covered the destroyers closing from the port beam. It halved his advantage, but it was the only option left. The secondary guns fired at extreme range, rarely hitting, but forcing the enemy to maneuver, buying time measured in seconds that still mattered. Z7 closed from astern, her guns pounding Edinburgh's superstructure. Hits knocked out ventilation, disabled an anti-aircraft mount, and started fires that spread through already damaged sections. Edinburgh answered with deliberate precision. One 6-inch shell crippled Z7's forward turret. Another tore into her hull, forcing her to disengage. But numbers and maneuverability favored the Germans. Z24 and Z25 circled relentlessly, suppressing Edinburgh's forward guns and exploiting her forced starboard turn. British destroyers Foresight and Forester charged in repeatedly, brave but outmatched, while Bulldogs stayed close to assist survivors if the worst came. Then the balance tipped. A fourth German destroyer, Hermann Schoemann, arrived late, but with torpedoes. Her captain immediately recognized the pattern of Edinburgh's circling movement. The crippled cruiser repeated the same turn every 18 minutes. All he had to do was wait. At 10:15, Schoemann launched a full spread. Lookouts spotted the wakes too late. Edinburgh could not turn harder than she already was. Most torpedoes missed, but one struck forward on the port side. The explosion tore open the bow and flooded compartments that had survived the earlier hit. The ship plunged by the head, decks vanishing beneath green water as the stern lifted sharply. Faulkner knew the truth at once. Edinburgh was finished. No pumps could save her. Structural damage made towing impossible. His duty narrowed to one command only: save the crew. Orders were given to abandon ship. Classified material was destroyed. Scuttling charges were set to deny the enemy anything of value. The evacuation was chaotic at first, then disciplined. Destroyers closed in, hauling survivors aboard as the cruiser settled lower with each minute. Many were pulled from the water alive but could not be saved. Arctic conditions allowed no margin for error. Faulkner remained aboard until the last possible moment, ensuring nothing usable remained. When the bridge flooded, he finally left the ship. At 11:20, the scuttling charges detonated. HMS Edinburgh rolled slowly and slipped beneath the Arctic Ocean, disappearing stern-first into 800 feet of freezing water. Her guns pointed skyward until the last second. In her bomb room, the gold remained exactly where it had been secured: 93 crates, 465 bars, untouched. The coordinates were recorded. The files sealed. The war moved on. German destroyer Hermann Schoemann, damaged during the battle, was later scuttled by her own crew. Survivors from both sides were rescued and taken prisoner. Convoy QP-11, battered but intact, reached Iceland, by Arctic standards, a success. Edinburgh and her cargo lay undisturbed for nearly 4 decades. Only in 1981, when technology finally caught up with history, did salvage teams return to her resting place. Using remotely operated vehicles and saturation divers, they cut into the wreck and recovered the gold. All 465 bars were brought back to the surface across 2 operations, the last lifted in 1986. Every bar accounted for. Stalin's payment, sent to keep the lifeline alive, had gone down with the ship. And in the end, it came back up.